services were subjected to a gauntlet of spitting, of cursing, of vile images that were being held up. And my wife thought that was wrong and that it was important that she help and provide women with the support they needed in order to access those services. So when Mr. Astorino says that vetoing a law like that here in Westchester County, which helps women in that situation, a law that's supported by Planned Parenthood, by NARAL, by advocates for choice and women's reproductive health across the board, when he says that's nonsense or it doesn't matter, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And when he says that politicians like himself ought to be making medical decisions, private decisions for women, instead of trusting women and doctors, I think he's insulting the great majority of Westchester residents who believe strongly in a woman's right to choose and reject Mr. Astorino's view on this subject.
All right, thanks very much, Mr. Lungariello. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to ask a follow-up question to Mr. Astorino on perhaps tax breaks for small businesses.
I'll try to take it back to the business side of things, and I wanted to see what are some specific examples of public-private partnerships that can be undertaken.
Playland. Playland was an enigma for this county for many, many years. It loses $3 to $5 million a year. That's unacceptable. My job as county executive is to solve these kind of problems, and that's what we're doing. We're fixing problems for taxpayers by not raising taxes. We're also helping the economy, as we've done with small businesses and big corporations, to keep them here. But Playland is a special place, and Playland should not be allowed to continue to die as it has been. The attendance at Playland has gone from 1 million down to 433,000 in just the last 7 years. Playland is a great place. So here's the plan for Playland. Let's take it from 90 days a year, that's all we have, and pray for nice weather, that Joe Rayo says it's good, go. But if that doesn't happen, people don't go, and we lose more money. So to save taxpayers money, we brought in the professionals, and the plan is going to be spectacular. I hope you go to westchestergov.com or robastorino.com. See for yourself what's going to be at Playland. We're going to have new restaurants. All the rides are going to stay, but some new ones are going to be added. We're going to open up the space so you can have a great lawn and look out on the Long Island Sound, a field house, and a little mini water park, which every kid loves. It's going to be great.
All right, Mr. Astorino, thanks very much. Well, folks, we've got to take a quick break, but back in 2 minutes with more of our Vote 2013 election special here on News 12. All right, we are back with the final segment of this Vote 2013 live debate here on News 12. This is the home stretch. Let's get right around to another round of questions for the candidate. The next one comes from News 12's Janine Rose. This will go to Noam Bramson. Janine.
Okay, Mr. Bramson, a different take here. You mentioned in your opening statement, and your campaign made a lot of noise about the fact that Bill Clinton endorsed your candidacy during a big bash that was held in Westchester County last night. But at the end of the day, the Clinton folks would not let any of the press into the event, and there were no press photos. This was one of the most bizarre political endorsements we have ever seen because the press was not invited in. Was Bill Clinton hedging his bets in case the other guy wins?
Oh, absolutely not. I think anyone who actually was at the event or has seen YouTube clips of it, which are on the internet, will see that his support of the campaign has been full-throated. And the reason for that is he knows that I'm a Democrat who governs in the Clinton tradition. Opportunity, community, responsibility. I believe in fiscal balance. I believe in respecting individual rights. I believe in economic growth as a driver for all the other things that we want to accomplish. The reason that there was no press allowed is that's a general policy that the Clinton folks have used, not just in terms of their endorsement in this campaign, but their endorsement in campaigns around the country this year. So there's nothing unusual about it here in Westchester County. And really, Bill Clinton laid out the case in such clear terms. He made it clear that there are two ways to save money. One way of saving money is hurting the working families of Westchester County. It's by cutting child care and neighborhood health centers and eviction prevention and other things that so many people need in order to get by and support themselves. The other way to save money is to be more efficient, to demand more and expect more of the people with whom you work, to have high standards, to share services so we can cut waste and duplication. And Bill Clinton made it very clear as well that issues like a woman's right to choose and respect for Roe v. Wade, that matters in a county race. Respect for gun safety and supporting sensible gun safety laws, that matters in a county race. believing that all of us are equally entitled to the same rights, including our gay and lesbian neighbors. That matters in Westchester County as well. So I was honored to have Bill Clinton's support, and I think he makes the case better than anyone.
All right, thanks very much. Let's now go to Mr. Astorino. 90 seconds on the Bill Clinton endorsement.
Well, a Democrat endorsing a Democrat, but Bill Clinton, I'm proud that he and the former Secretary of State live in Westchester County. And I'm sure he's probably happy that I've reduced his property tax bills. But I will say this, there is a very big disagreement in how we do things. In order for Mr. Bramson to take his 40% pay raise, just think about this again in 2008, when things were going horribly wrong. He thought it was right to give him a 40% pay raise as a part-time mayor to $89,000. And how did he do that? He drained the reserves from $13.5 million down to $1 million. He raised taxes every year, cumulatively, to 109%, 7% a year. What else did he do? He cut police and fire to pay for that. He went into a credit rating drop. All of these things are bad, and New Rochelle people know that. They're trying to escape, but they can't. And so the problem is the differences between us have to be shed tonight, and I will shed them all night long, because we have shed the taxes. We have made sure that the tax rate has dropped in Westchester County. I'm only responsible for a county budget. He's responsible for the city budget. That's all we should be concerned about right now, because we have no effect on anyone else's budget. And we have done our job in protecting taxpayers, and I understand what it's like for our seniors, our middle class. You know, middle class needs a break. They've gotten it under me. In Westchester County, they're much better today than they were 4 years ago. We don't want to go back to where we were. We're just raising taxes left and right. That's the knee-jerk reaction of Noam Bramson. Just ask people in New Rochelle.
All right, thank you, Mr. Astorino. Now, we're in the lightning round, so 45 seconds now for these follow-up questions.
It's a simple one. I apologize for the skepticism, Mr. Bramson, but is it still an endorsement if the public doesn't see the handshake?
Oh, most certainly it's an endorsement. The president made that abundantly clear, and I'm delighted to have Bill Clinton's full-throated support in this campaign. And, you know, it's funny, I listened to Mr. Astorino a moment ago. A number of my supporters are gathered at a pub in White Plains for a debate watch party, and I think they're having a drinking game. And every time Mr. Astorino says 109% or 40%, they have to take a drink. And I think they're going to need a lot of designated drivers tonight, because he has a hard time getting off his talking points. And this is part of the reason people get frustrated with politics. This election should be about our future. It should be about issues that matter to the people of Westchester County. That's another thing that Bill Clinton made very clear. It's what you do in office that really counts. And what I'm focused on is making sure Westchester has an economic future in which every single one of us has an opportunity to succeed. I'm focused on making sure that our costs are cut so we can afford to live here, and making sure that we protect our environment.
Thank you, Mr. Bramson. Okay, our next question from Jerry McKinstry of WVOX AM Radio for Rob Astorino.
Yes, are the county police stationed outside this bar where the Democrats are hanging out? No.
109%, take another drink.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Mr. Astorino, this has been a contentious campaign. It's been hard fought, and I'm wondering if you could say something nice about some, or compliment some policy decisions that Mr. Bramson has made during his tenure as mayor.
Well, I wholeheartedly disagree with the policy decisions. Raising taxes 109% is not a good thing. A 40% pay raise when everyone else is suffering is not a good thing. Raising every fee imaginable, a library tax, a garbage fee. By the way, the garbage fee has quadrupled. There is a federal lawsuit, a civil rights federal lawsuit against the garbage fee. That's how onerous it is. And to cut police and fire, that doesn't make sense to me. I'm very proud of the endorsements I've received that matter from all of law enforcement, from the League of Conservation Voters, from the Labor Council, because we're doing a good job on the environment, protecting the environment with our mass transit position for the bridge, for also making sure that the HMRF, which is where you can bring your household material, the bad stuff in your house that's underneath the sink, get them over there and go there. It's a great place in Valhalla. All the toxic chemicals. We went in and cleaned out the Bronx River this weekend and throughout the years, where we took out all the debris. So I'm proud of the endorsements that I've gotten that mean really something. Just getting endorsement from a fellow Democrat or a fellow Republican doesn't really mean anything to me. But I will say this, I think he's a nice man, despite the stuff that he's been throwing at me and all these ridiculous partisan charges. Obviously, from what I've seen, he's a good dad. He brings his boys to these events, and he's a dedicated husband. So and a good public servant. You know, we have disagreements on things, but clearly 18 years in serving the city of New Rochelle is something he should be proud of.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Astorino. This is water, by the way. Okay.
Do you want me to say a kind word about
Bramson,
Rob?
I believe that you are tasked with saying something nice about your
Exactly,
opponent.
and I'm going to respond in kind to at least the last portion of Rob's comments. I admire anyone who devotes themselves to public service, and I know that Rob has. And he has a wonderful, devoted family, lovely children, a wonderful, supportive spouse, as I do. And I'm sure Rob and I would agree that as difficult as it sometimes is to be a candidate, it's much harder to be a family member for a candidate. And those are burdens that our respective families clearly have to bear. And I agree, Rob's a nice guy, a pleasant person. We've always gotten along well. But the point is, it's in the end not the smile that counts. It's what's behind the smile. It's what you do. It's what you believe. It's the values that you hold and how you apply them to public life. And by that standard, Rob and I have enormous disagreements. He's opposed to a woman's right to choose. I support it. He's opposed to common sense gun safety regulations. I support them. He's opposed to gays and lesbians having an opportunity to marry. I support marriage equality. Rob's approach to balancing the budget is to cut child care and neighborhood health centers. My approach is sharing services so we can be more efficient. Rob has a narrow conception of how we're going to grow our economy. I have an expansive conception that includes land use and infrastructure and human skills. So we would govern Westchester in very different ways, and I'm absolutely convinced that the approach I've laid out is more consistent with what most people in Westchester want and expect from a county executive, and it will give all of us a better future in which everyone has a chance to succeed.
All right, Jerry McKinstry, you have a 45-second follow-up.
Okay, Mr. Astorino, the first 4 years of your administration, you've had many battles with the Board of Legislators, particularly Democrats. I was wondering, how do you plan to change that dynamic in a second term?
Well, it has changed. When I got on, there were 13 Democrats, 4 Republicans, so everything I did was to protect taxpayers. When they wanted to spend more, I protected taxpayers by vetoing their spending. And we have done a good job over 3 years. My 3 budgets have been passed unanimously each year with bipartisan support. This past year, when Democrats walked out of the chambers, including the Majority Leader Peter Harckham, Catherine Borgia, and others, when they walked out of the chambers, shut off the lights, put on the bells, and refused to do their job, I got the remaining 9 people to sit in a conference room, to compromise, and to work out a budget without raising taxes, and that's what we did. 2 Democrats, 7 Republicans. That's the way we've gotten things done. I've signed a lot of bipartisan legislation, and I'm proud of what we've done in this county. And I will continue to do that, but I will always, always fight for the taxpayer and not a political party.
All right, thank you, Mr. Astorino. We have one last question from the panelists anyway. Mr. Lungariello of the Westchester County Business Journal and HV Biz, your question for Noam Bramson.
Mr. Bramson, there are several million square feet of vacant office space in Westchester County. What's the county's role in not only attracting new tenants, but finding and encouraging new adaptive reuses?
Well, it's critical that we create an overall climate that's welcoming to business and welcoming to investment. And that relates to many of the things that we spoke about earlier. It's having certainty that the fabric of our land use regulations encourages mixed-use development, including flexibility in zoning to convert commercial to residential and back again. And that's something that's primarily in the hands of localities, but the county can be helpful in making sure that localities can plan in a way that's consistent with regional goals. The county can use its infrastructure budget to help promote growth in the right places, and at the same time protect open spaces and protect the environment where that's the priority. And the county can be helping to ensure that people in our region have the skills to attract the jobs of the future. I want to come back to something that Mr. Astorino said a moment ago, because the level of conflict that's existed between the county executive and the legislature, and for that matter between Westchester County and other levels of government, has been unprecedented during this term. And it reminds me a little bit of what's happening in Washington, D.C. We don't need that kind of hyperpartisanship here. And I know the county executive likes to say, well, I'm fighting on the basis of principle. That's the same thing that Ted Cruz and the House Republicans are saying. I'm fighting on principle and to heck with the consequences. That's not how we can look at it, because as the Scarsdale Inquirer said in its endorsement of me, defiance is not governance. And if you want to accomplish things, you have to be willing to work with people in order to get things done.
All right, thanks very much. Mr. Astorino, 90 seconds response.
Look, if saying no means standing for the taxpayers, I will always say no. If vetoing bad legislation and stopping spending from going out of control, as the Democrats on the county board wanted to do for the first 2 years, I will stand firmly against that and with the taxpayers. I have worked very well with the Board of Legislators, despite some of the disagreements. But when they took me to court 6 times, it was because I was protecting taxpayers and they weren't. When I was in court with the federal government, it was because I was protecting taxpayers and our land use, so the federal government didn't take control of your neighborhoods. That I will stand firm all the time. I will definitely and continuously fight for you. But we have worked in a very good bipartisan fashion. I'll continue to do that. That's how we've gotten legislation passed. And I'll continue to make sure that we protect the environment as we have. I just signed legislation that forbids fracking waste from coming into Westchester County. We had an open space initiative where we had 59 acres at the Croft, which is at Teton Reservation in the northern towns, which is protecting our watershed and making 2,000 acres now contiguous. Those are the kind of things that I continue to do and working with the legislature, but I will not yield to the federal government that wants to take over our local land use and zoning controls. And I certainly will not back down when Democrats on the county board, or for Republicans for that matter too, that want to spend and tax this county into oblivion. I won't do that. That's how you've governed in New Rochelle, but I will not do that. You have pummeled your taxpayers because you have taken the easy way out. Without saying no, without making cuts, you have drained the reserves, you have cut fire and police, and you padded your own paycheck by taking a 40% raise to $89,000 for a part-time job. That's the difference between us. So yes, I will stand on principle, but I will always stand for the taxpayers.
All right, thanks very much. We have a 45-second rebuttal or a final question from Mr. Lungriello to Mr. Bramson.
Yes, Mr. Bramson. So building off of that, where do you draw the line between being a regional leader and stepping on the toes of the local municipality's jurisdiction?
Well, I think it's very important for the county to be a supportive partner. We shouldn't be imposing things on localities, but we ought to be helping when we can, because very often the resources that the county can bring to bear to assist communities are greater than those available to the communities themselves, and because the county can achieve regional efficiencies and economies of scale that may not be available to localities. That's a critical difference. Now, coming back to some of the things that Rob said just a moment ago, he said, well, I'm standing up for the taxpayers in my fights with the legislature. In fact, Rob vetoed the budget that had a 2% cut in the tax levy, and that veto was overridden by the legislature, and now he's running on the same budget that he vetoed. And I think that's a good example of rewriting history in order to create an untruthful account of what actually transpired. And in terms of protecting the taxpayer, again, the fights with the federal government costing us $40 million and counting. It's costing all of us a lot.
All right, thank you very much. We are rapidly running out of time here, folks. It's been a lot of fun, so we're going to go straight to our closing statements. Representatives from each campaign recently chose the order. Noam Bramson, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, this has been a good back and forth, and as always, I want to thank Rob for his service and for the opportunity to speak with him about the issues that are confronting the future of Westchester. And even though we've beaten each other up pretty good, in truth, this is not about me, and it's not about Rob. What's at stake in this election are the people of Westchester County. It's parents who need childcare in order to hold on to a job. It's women who ought to be able to access medical services without being subject to intimidation and harassment. It's families who deserve to know that their government is going to stand up for the safety of our communities instead of carrying water for the gun lobby. And it's every single one of us who deserves to have a growing, thriving economy, a tax bill that we can actually afford, and environmental protection to ensure that we have a healthy environment going forward. I am a mainstream Clinton Democrat, and Rob's record tells us that he is a Tea Party Republican who lines up with the far right wing on issue after issue after issue. I'm very proud to have grown up in Westchester County. You know, my parents were refugees during the Second World War. They fled the Holocaust in Poland and Russia and Central Asia and Israel, finally came to the United States in the 1950s and settled in New York, but it wasn't until they came to Westchester that they were truly home. And I want my children to have the same sense of possibility, the same belief that they can make a good life here that I was privileged to have when I was growing up. And I want that same opportunity for all the children in this county, whatever their challenges, whatever their circumstances, because in the end, we are in this together. We're going up or down together. We have a stake in the success of our neighbors. And I'm convinced that if we act with intelligence and dedication and purpose, that the best days of our county are ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bramson. Mr. Astorino, you have 2 minutes, and the folks at home, you may want to get your cups ready.
Thank you for watching this. This past weekend, I was at the Harrison Rye football game, and I saw Joe Girardi, who just re-signed with the Yankees for 4 years. And I thank Joe for saying what he did publicly, that they wanted to stay in Westchester County. That was the deciding factor in why he re-signed with the Yankees. And Joe's not the only one. 27,000 new jobs have been added in this county over the last 4 years, and we're right on the right track. Just see the Marist poll where 64% say this county is on the right track. We have protected taxpayers by cutting the tax levy over the last